Hey guys, it's Kingdom Orange 2 here, and welcome back to my channel. Since a lot of you guys seem to have a love for fairies and all things magical, for today's video, I wanted to take a look back at both the Tinkerbell movies as well as the Disney Fairy books they were based on. Now, if you've never heard of the Disney Fairy books or just need a quick reminder, they were initially released back in 2005, with the first novel being titled Fairy Dust and the Quest for the Egg. The novel was then followed by a series of chapter books titled The Tales of Pixie Hollow, with 26 of them being published all the way up to 2012. In 2008, the first Tinkerbell movie was released, and 5 more were created until the last one was released in 2014. Now, a lot of characters and storylines do overlap in both the movies and books, but they are technically separate entities. However, I still thought it would be fun if I sat down and compared the two of them, so without further ado, let me not waste any more of your time and let's get right into it. Pixie Hollow. In the Tinkerbell movies, Pixie Hollow is this vast space that consists of the pixie dust tree and sections that are divided based on the 4 seasons. For a very long time, one of the sections, the Winter Woods, was inaccessible for warm weather fairies, but Tinkerbell was able to change that by figuring out a way for fairies to visit by covering their wings in frost. Now, another thing that's important to point out is that fairies live in their own houses throughout the sections. So for example, Tinkerbell lives in an area of the Spring Valley called Tinker's Nook inside of a little wooden home. However, in the Disney Fairies books, everyone lives in a giant maple tree called the Home Tree. The fairies each have their own room, which is listed on a directory in the lobby, and their rooms are decorated based on their talents. The only fairy who doesn't live here is Vidya, who decided instead to live in a sour plum tree at the edge of the orchard. Now, something that I've wanted to discuss with people for like almost about a decade is this page located in the guidebook in the realm of the Never Fairies, the Secret World of Pixie Hollow. It explains that Pixie Hollow was once a huge kingdom that was accessed by flying through a secret portal hidden behind a waterfall. Fairies would live in houses throughout Pixie Hollow, and in the center lied this grand pixie dust tree. However, years ago, a battle destroyed the tree, and the magic began to disappear until fortunately the fairies found Mother Dove, a magical bird whose feathers they could use to grind into pixie dust. Now, one thing that I find a little odd is that the book mentions a fire caused Mother Dove to become a magical bird, so I'm not entirely sure if the battle in Pixie Hollow led to a fire, but I don't understand who would be battling in Pixie Hollow in the first place. I don't know, I guess maybe the author just messed up when writing and forgot to change it. But before we go on, there is something strange about the relationship between the Tinkerbell movies and the books. In the guidebook mentioned earlier, there was a page called The Ring of Belief, which mentions how human children must keep fairies alive by clapping their hands to show that they believe in them. This plot point is a very important element to the Disney Fairies books, but was never really touched on in the Tinkerbell movies. Now, according to Disney Wiki, the Tinkerbell movie was completely different than what was released in 2008. While not much is known about what exactly the plot was going to be, from various leaked storyboards and teaser trailers, it was seemingly supposed to focus on Tinkerbell and her friends restoring imagination to the world. Peter Pan was also planned on being introduced, and one important character was an orphan named Victoria. Also, interestingly enough, in one extended clip, it shows the fairies flying away from a tree and through a magic waterfall, exactly what was described about Pixie Hollow in the history section of the guidebook. So while I'll never know 100% what the movie was going to be about, I'm gonna try and make up some sort of conclusion. Since the first Disney Fairies book came out in 2005, while the movie was going to be initially released in 2007, I assume that maybe the movie would have served as some sort of prequel to the books, ending with the fire and Tinkerbell and her friends discovering Mother Dove. Now, even if I'm completely wrong about this, which I probably am, Disney knows that people were confused and did try to fix it with a book in 2009 called The World of Fairies at the Dawn of Pixie Hollow. In this book, it explains that the main events of the movies happened during a time called the Golden Age, and since we know that the Disney Fairies books happened after Tinkerbell met Peter Pan, I assume that the books take place in the current day while the movie events happened 100 years ago. This wouldn't technically match everything up, but it was a good effort on the writer's part to try and explain the differences. Characters. In the Tinkerbell movies, Tink is usually accompanied by her 4 best friends: Rosetta, a garden fairy; Iridessa, a light fairy; Fawn an animal fairy, and Silvermist a water fairy. They're not technically the leaders of their talents, but are usually seen as the most gifted in their talent groups. In the books, however, Tinkerbell's main group of friends includes Lily, a garden fairy who's known to have the most beautiful garden in all of Pixie Hollow, Fira, a light fairy who's always the star of the Lights Fairy show, Beck, an animal fairy who looks way too much like Tinkerbell, and Ronnie, a water fairy who doesn't have wings because she sacrificed them in order to save Pixie Hollow. Now, while none of Tinkerbell's friends in the Disney Fairies book appear in the movies, her friends from the movies do appear in the books. Originally, they were all rather small side characters, and two of them have different appearances. Fawn initially was lighter skinned, wore purple, and had red hair, while Iridessa wore a blue dress instead of a yellow one. Once the movies were released, both Fawn and Iridessa's appearances were updated to match their movie counterparts, and the four girls were integrated more into the book's storylines. So in comparing both groups of friends, I couldn't really say one group is better than the other. Something I find a bit odd is why the writers of the movies chose secondary characters from the books to be Tinkerbell's main friends. At first I thought it may had something to do with diversity, but that doesn't really make sense because Tinkerbell kinda already had a diverse group of friends. I'm also very surprised as to why none of the characters from the books ever made it to the movies. I think Ronnie and her lack of wings would have made an excellent plot for a future movie, but maybe the writers didn't want fairies from the same talent to overshadow each other. Honestly, who knows? Talents. Talents are very important in both the books and movies, and are essentially a natural ability each fairy is born with. In the books, when a fairy is born in Neverland, they announce to the other fairies their name along with their talent. Now, there was one instance with a fairy named Prilla who was unaware of what her talent was when she arrived to Neverland, until she discovers she had the ability to teleport to the mainland in the blink of an eye, and used her talent to help children believe in fairies. In the movies, though, the way in which fairies discover their talent is a bit more exciting. When a new fairy arrives in Neverland, they are presented with several items representing the different talents in Pixie Hollow. The way in which they interact with the items determines what talent they are, like how Tinkerbell was determined to be a Tinker talent when the hammer began to glow and float towards her. Queen Clarion also tells everyone that her name is Tinkerbell, so she is either in charge of naming the fairies or has some sort of sixth sense with knowing the fairies' names. Now, in the books, there are like 100 different talents and sub-talents ranging from polish lining to table setting to fern spotting. Honestly, I find the classification to be comically bizarre. Like, why is there a need for an olive pressing talent and a pretzel twisting talent? I don't know, maybe I'm really overthinking this, but I don't know why the writers felt the need to keep jobs so oddly specific. On the other hand, the movies don't really have that many talents. In the first film, the only talents that were introduced were the nature talent fairies and the tinker talent. While more talents were introduced in the later movies, such as storytelling, scout, and summoning talents, I think the reason a lot of them were left out was partially to make Tinkerbell's feeling of exclusion make more sense. Now, a cool thing that was discovered by Zarina, a talented dust-keeping fairy, is that you can change the fairy's talent by sprinkling different colored pixie dust onto them. So for example, when Tinkerbell was pelted with blue pixie dust, she turned into a water fairy. Now, I'm a little confused about how there would be a dust color for each and every one of the talents, but I don't think this is an important enough plot point to warrant some sort of explanation. Even with all the categories that I could compare the books to the movies, it's really hard to judge which one was truly better. I will say that the books don't really get the appreciation they deserve. I do realize a lot of them are mostly chapter books written for young kids, but the bigger novels would often touch on subjects that were even too mature for the Tinkerbell movies. And what's really a shame is that both franchises seem to be dead in the water, with the closure of the Disney Toon Studios halting the future of the Tinkerbell movies. But I will say that I think that Disney could really dip back into the books if they wanted to, as a lot of the plots would make for great TV episodes, but who knows? Only time will tell. Now, as always, make sure to write down your opinions below on both the Tinkerbell movies as well as the books, and if you would like, feel free to check me out on both my Instagram and TikTok pages. It's the same username for both, and I love meeting with new people and chatting with all of you. If you liked this video today and want to see more content in the future, make sure you hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Thank you guys so much for watching today, and I will see you soon. Bye!